So my name is Leanne Pero, MBE, and I'm award-winning social entrepreneur from South London. I set up my first company, which is a community interest company called The Movement Factory, when I was just 15 years old. That company is going to be turning 25 next year, so you can guess my age. And I also am the founder of Black Women Rising UK, a cancer charity that helps Black women who have gone through a cancer diagnosis and empowers them through their journey. So I call myself a social entrepreneur. And the reason I do that is because both of the companies that I run, I didn't set them up with anything in mind other than to try and make a difference. And also both of the companies I set up, I didn't actually expect them to become the companies that they are today. They really were about seeing a need that was happening in my community. So for dance, I noticed that there was a lot of young girls that were on the streets, and because I was a trained dancer, I used that skill to inspire other people in my peer group to become more active, because I saw how much that changed my life. With the cancer and setting up Black Women Rising, I saw that there was not services for Black women to come together in a familiar setting with people that had the similar cultural backgrounds than them to talk about their cancer journeys that are very unique to our white counterparts. What really motivates me in my day-to-day entrepreneurial life really is just seeing so much change and how much good that it's doing for the people who I work with. In terms of the young people, you know, the company, as I mentioned, is turning 25 years old. I've now got doctors, lawyers, West End stars, people who have gone on to be amazing mothers and fathers who have said, if it wasn't for me coming to that dance group, I don't think I'd be here today. And that just continues to let me know that, you know, the company exists for the greater good and there's a long-term plan in place. And I just love seeing those outcomes. And then obviously on the cancer side, we're 5 years in with the cancer charity. And I think seeing the women going through their journeys and feeling empowered and leaving, you know, their cancer journeys feeling like they can move on with life and move on being happy. And those are the outcomes that I love to see. And that's what motivates me. So with young people I would say is probably one of my biggest passions is watching how young people behave, how they respond to things that they like, and also seeing the outcomes from that. And I definitely think through empowering young people to make informed choices and leading by the things that they want is where you're going to see the best out of any young person. I noticed through my dance work that actually most of the kids that came weren't coming because they wanted to be great dancers. They were coming because they wanted to be into something positive, and using those key skills that they were learning from that dance, stuff like building their confidence. It could be stuff like working in a team. It could be stuff like just problem solving. But also on the other side, the enjoyment and achievement of maybe doing a show, you know, creating a routine with their peer group, seeing all those amazing key skills that they're learning from all of that and how they put that into their everyday life, for me is how young people take control of everything that they want to do, but also learn about themselves and grow within themselves. And that's what dance did to me many, many years ago. I think that's what steered me away from a lot of, I would say, you know, a lot of bad things. You know, I grew up in Peckham in South London. Our family was really poor. And I could see that, you know, lots of people that were in similar situations than me, people that were older and maybe had gone through the same sort of upbringing as I have, hadn't made the best life choices. And for me, I realized that was something that I didn't want to go down. So using dance as that kind of engagement tool to get that out of young people is amazing. And I now know, 25 years on, it's not just dance, it's through all the other sports and physical activities that they take part in, any other hobbies that they take part in where they gain those key skills. And that is how they take control of their life. And that's what really inspired me to write the book, Take Control. You know, I wrote that book when just before I was 30. At the time, the idea that that book was around really honing in on what I really learned from starting that dance company at such a young age, but also how I adapted all those key skills that I learned running the dance company and taking part in the dance to every other aspect of my life. So I was a childhood sexual abuse victim. I was sexually molested by a family friend from the age of 10 to 13. And when I came out and said that what this person was doing, I wasn't believed at first, which led for me leaving my family home, moving in with my estranged dad, who I didn't really have a relationship with. And I ended up living with him for 2 to 3 years. That time in my life, I would say, up until cancer, was probably the hardest time. Not only did I feel really, really alone, but I also had feelings of not wanting to be here. And I would always say that dance and having that saved me 110%. And I think that that's what gave me the passion to start the dance classes. But also going through that allowed me to go through this kind of experience of becoming an adult at such a young age as well. I had to grow up. I had to be a lot more adult than my peers. My life completely changed. And as I started the dance company and I started working really, really young, and building an income and building the dance company, which was at a really young age of the dance company, was getting a lot of attention. And I realized that I wasn't living life like a normal 20-year-old, you know, and maybe because there was a part of me that I believe like my teenagehood, my childhood had been robbed. And I just felt like I wasn't enjoying life enough. And I put a lot of focus in my early 20s on just kind of doing normal things that 20-year-olds do, such as going on holiday with friends, going out, going for drinks, all things that I had kind of convinced myself that I wasn't the life that I was allowed to live. So there was a lot of, I would say in my 20s, like a lot of undoing. And I then had some therapy. That was the first time I asked for therapy, was in my 20s, even though that happened to me in my teens. Dance kind of was my therapy in that sense. It was in my 20s when I realized actually I need to go and unpack all of this stuff. And I started therapy, and that really, really changed how I felt about myself and how much I had to start unlearning a lot of these childhood patterns that had kind of come up from my upbringing, into the sexual abuse, into the relationship with my family, into the relationship I had with myself. And I really felt like at the end part of my 30s, from 27, I really started to live, and I really started to embrace all of the things that I had been through. And the therapy was making that, you know, it was making that possible. And then when I reached 30, it was my mum, who had had breast cancer once before when we was a lot younger, who said that she had found a lump, and she'd asked if I could come with her for that lump to be screened. And unfortunately, she was diagnosed with breast cancer for the second time. And thank God it was caught very early. So 6 months after my mum was diagnosed, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it absolutely floored the life out of me. I think it was in that journey that I realized that although I was going through this and this was something that was happening to me, what was going around happening to others, and what I noticed in the hospital straight away was that actually there was no reflection on women that looked like me going through cancer. There are so many black women sitting on that ward, and not one of them is in the support group. We need our own space. And that's where I set up my first support group that has now become 5 years old, and we now call it Black Women Rising. So Black Women Rising is a UK-based registered charity, and it sits underneath my overall charitable organisation called the Leanne Pero Foundation. Black Women Rising is the flagship program, and what Black Women Rising does is it empowers women of colour through their cancer diagnosis. So what we work on is mainly working kind of like 3 different pillars. On one hand, we create resources for people who have been diagnosed with cancer, but also learning leaflets for people who want to learn about our experiences. We have our core member services, so we run support groups, supper clubs, coffee mornings, a nurse support line, all for the members that come through the doors. And then we also have a creative program. So we have things like we've created a theatre production, using my creative background really to create a creative program to raise awareness of cancer within the community. So usually we do that attached with brands. We do that with different funding organisations. So we've had a theatre production. We have had a portrait exhibition at the Oxo Tower, and we have got a book coming out later this year as well. So working in those kind of 3 dimensions kind of marries my world of like creativity, but also the cancer stuff that's going on, and kind of use that bespoke program of work to work with our women. And we now have 500 members 5 years on. For me, one of the reasons I think the organisation exists really is around storytelling. That's why I started up the organisation in the first place, was to get these stories that were unseen and unheard, which is the name of our theatre production, by the way. These unseen and unheard stories out into the atmosphere, like out into the world. And it was about listening to the experiences of these women, because it was always twofold. You know, it was on one hand, there's a lot of medical bias, and there's like a lot of medical racism, and a lot of experiences that they're going through medically that, you know, are unique to other races, not being listened to, not being heard when they're presenting with the first sort of symptoms of cancer. Cancer's being diagnosed a lot later, people being diagnosed with cancer in A&E because the doctors are not listening to them. These statistics were out there, but on the flip side, these women were getting stigma from their own communities when they're being diagnosed. Things like cancer's a curse for things you've done in the past. You don't take chemo, God wouldn't want you to take chemo. Don't take off your breast. Don't have a mastectomy because God wouldn't want you to. So these women were experiencing this twofold of obstacles, and it was really important that everyone told their stories. And for me, that has been the catalyst of all of our work, is storytelling enough to make change, which we've seen so much change in 5 years. You know, me and the fact that I'm talking about the fact that 7 years ago when I was diagnosed, I never saw any, representation of people who look like me. Actually, lots of people probably thinking, well, I see lots of adverts now. Yeah, because that's the hard work that we've really had to do. I'm really, really proud of that. And for me, it is about that storytelling. That's what's important, and that's what's going to get the message out.